Man, they met. She and Trump finally met. Have you seen the statements? Have you been able to catch up with all the news?
Yes, I saw the initial statements at the state dinner, then the statements that were made at the joint conference, and none of them are really surprising to me. What surprised me the most is what we already predicted was going to happen here, was that China was going to come off as the adults in the room who were there for serious, sober developments using diplomatic language, right? And acting with Xi as a statesman. What didn't surprise me is that Trump arrived after these statements where she is making reference to the Thucydides, trap, which is a reference to the Peloponnesian War, in which a rising power has, which I guess he assumes is China, has friction with an existing geopolitical power just through the strength of their economic and military rise. And he was saying, and he had first referenced this in 2015, that the United States and China shouldn't create this friction that could, in his words, lead to conflict. And the only place that there really appears to be a location where there would be any conflict would be around Taiwan.
Taiwan, yeah.
A lot of
He drew a very clear red line there. He made the red line very clear on that point.
Yeah, he did. But I just want to contrast this. Trump came off as a businessman who was there to cut deals and do transactions, right? And so I had this amusing juxtaposition of a guy who's giving a speech, which sounds like he could be giving it at the United Nations Security Council, which 20 years ago, even 4 years ago, we would have taken as very serious policy discussions, him laying out where the national interests of China are. And on the other hand, I've got Donald Trump, who sounds like one of those advertisers, right, for an Indian casino, where he's saying we have the most luxurious beds, we have the best rooms, we have the loosest slots, we pay out the most on craps tables. That's what it really sounded like. Two entirely different messages coming out of two entirely different leaders. And it's almost as if Trump thinks that, we're here to do business. Art of the deal is going to override the art of war, right? Sun Tzu's dictums. He's got another thing coming. So also, one last thing. You and I discussed this a week ago. And we said one of three things was going to come out of this. And the one that happened today was the one that I thought was the least likely one to happen, which one was Trump was going to either use military force to show that he is a superpower. But, it's like saying you're a superpower. Once you say it, you're not one, right? Superpower is demonstrated. So we thought maybe he would do a demonstration of force, which is still going on at Israel's urging. Just this weekend, it's Thursday, so Israel is going into a national security weekend as part of their Sabbath, quote, in anticipation of American strikes against Iran, right? So that's one thing that could have happened. Trump didn't do that, or we haven't seen that demonstrated yet, that he's going to exercise force to make his point. The other was a complete humiliation and capitulation, which we knew that wasn't going to happen. But the third is the Trump literally probing for an off-ramp with Iran, with China, versus Iran. And he wanted to get China on side, right? By saying no nuclear weapons for Iran. Yeah, China says that, and at the exact same moment, they're, moving ballistic missile fuel and chemical precursors that would give them the capacity to build ICBMs if they wanted to, right? And then the Strait of Hormuz should be open, which China agrees with so much that just today, a Chinese ship went through the Strait of Hormuz in the IRGC traffic separation scheme and paid $2 million. So all of these things can be true. Trump can get his off-ramps he wants China's assistance. And that really made him look smaller in the eyes of the world, I think. It made him feel like he was being diplomatic. But he really went hat in hand to China to beg for their help.
That ship, that Chinese ship that went through, you think it did pay the $2 million to Iran?
Well, if it went through the IRGC toll booth, but you never know, right? There could be a Chinese
Is it possible?
waiver.
Is it possible Iran, or is it possible Iran let it through without charging a fee, more of a gesture of goodwill? But also the other argument is like, because in the statement, Trump said that China does not want to have a toll booth at the Strait of Hormuz. That's in the statement by the White House.
Sure.
That Trump says that she does not want that. But then
Yeah,
the argument would be, all right, cool. Iranian ships can go through then without paying a fee. Other ships will have to pay a fee. So Iran, the same way you said, Iran could say, China could say Iran shouldn't have a nuclear program, but then ship the precursors to them to be able to develop one. They could say, hey, no one should charge a fee at the Strait of Hormuz, but at the same time, Chinese ships go through for free or have some sort of deal with Iran. Everyone else has to pay. So in other words, the rhetoric that came out of China is more giving Trump political concessions, and that's it. And we may not see concrete action from China to follow. Because I'll read out what the White House said. The two sides agreed that the Strait of Hormuz must remain open to support the free flow of energy. President Xi also made clear China's opposition to the militarization of the Strait in any effort to charge a toll for its use. And China agreed that Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, and these are all great points. And these are the points Trump wanted out of China in this summit, so to speak. But China is not going to do this out of the goodness of their hearts. One of two things is going to happen. They are going to gain a concession, and by testing Trump's, how can I put it, conviction related to Taiwan, right? They still refer to it as a rogue province, right? And his chief concern from Taiwan is the United States selling Patriot anti-defense missiles, Harpoon anti-ship missiles. Their newest order has been for the ATACMS, ATACMS, right, from the High Mobility Multiple Rocket Launch System. So that's our advanced precision missile that is just one generation down, but it can fly 350 kilometers and deliver cluster munitions or unitary warheads, which could make an invasion force very unhappy, right? So the question is, now that if Trump gets this off-ramp and it's successful, right, that where the IRGC come back and says, oh, okay, Strait of Hormuz will open after they take a few weeks of, $2 million. This week, by the way, I don't know if you saw the announcement. Oh, I'm sure you did. The IRGC says 30 ships passed through the Strait of Hormuz this week using the IRGC traffic separation scheme, the multipass scheme, and they all paid $2 million. That's $60 million just for going out in a small boat. Just for allowing these vessels to come by and you look at them and wave at them, which is pretty good money. For Iran to go back on that and to go back to the previous traffic separation scheme to allow European vessels to come in and demine and to go back to the status quo is going to require something from Donald Trump, which he hasn't given up yet, whether they separate the nuclear negotiations from the end of war negotiations, or they get a formal statement saying the war is over. The United States will not hover over your country and strike anytime it wants, or even getting the concession of 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years for enriching uranium, which would be great for Iran because it's going to take them 3 to 5 years to dig out all of these mountains and build these, their centrifuges again. So any concession that we think we're getting from Iran on that point, we're just helping them, go and clean up the trash that we help make. China is going to get something on the other hand, though. And I think we're going to see if Trump slow walks or if there's been a discussion about slow walking weapon systems to Taiwan using the excuse that you have to send them to the Persian Gulf. And that's what he's been doing for Ukraine.
What do you make of China, Trump claiming that China would, or China saying that Trump offered them oil so they don't depend as much on the Strait of Hormuz? Is that China saying that was a surprise to me, because is that China So first, did Trump go there and say, "Hey, I'm going to continue the war, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys oil at a good price, so you guys don't suffer from it"? Or
Right.
is that them concluding that and they're going to avoid a kinetic war, but they'll continue being in economic warfare? So blockade of the Strait of Hormuz until Iran doesn't have the same requests, including a toll booth. So let's say China doesn't want a toll booth because then we don't want to see the same thing in the Strait of Malacca. So China want the freedom of navigation around the world, one can
Right.
argue. So maybe China agreed with the US that, hey, Iran is asking for too much. You guys got to put a blockade. We'll support you there. We'll stop supplying you with military equipment until they accept your off-ramp, President Trump. Do you get where I'm coming from? I'm trying to understand
Yeah.
what that deal could mean.
Well, let's step back, because a lot of people are going to see this on its face as a general just transaction. Trump saying, we have oil, you need oil, the SOH is closed, so come buy from us. Which sounds, I mean, to MAGA, that sounds awesome. Trump has been beating this drum for like the last month and a half. We have oil tankers coming to America. They're buying America oil. Drill, baby, drill. Well, there are some realities that I know from some of your other experts. There's some realities here that make that insane. It's fun to say it. It sounds like good rhetoric, but again, it comes off like a casino huckster, right? You come into our casino, free gin and tonics, and play our slot machines. However, America, the United States, every day is starting out with a 2 million barrel oil deficit just to basically function the United States, to keep energy at the level we're at right now. The United States has to buy all the oil that it has, that it's drilling, that's being sold on the open market, and then has to go to other countries and other sources, Nigeria, Venezuela, even now Russia, right? To bring in 2 million to that 4 million, they say now, by July, barrels of oil into the United States. U.S. producers have to buy that, right? In this insanely competitive market, just so that America breaks even. Because if we don't break even, where that deficit gap meets the amount of oil that's not coming in, that's where your gas prices doubled in 2 months. Doubled. And now we could be going to not $5 gasoline, $6, $7 a gallon gasoline, because here's the crazy part, Mario. U.S. oil producers are not selling their oil to America. They're selling some of it. It's worked into the futures price. But now that it's at $100, they have oil tankers, that mythological 150 oil tankers. Trump brags, oil tankers are coming to America. We have so much oil. They're coming to America, and they are buying at the spot market price in the $120, $150 range, because those other countries that are sending the tankers are desperate for any oil, right? And when U.S. producers sell it, guess what's not going into the American energy market? That oil is going onto tankers. Tankers turn around and they leave America. So now we get to operate at a much higher deficit. For Trump to say, this was a long way for me to say this sentence. For Trump to offer China oil that we don't have, okay? To use the Venezuelan oil with crumbling infrastructure, you got to blend it with Russian oil or Nigerian oil, right? And that oil's being sold everywhere but in America. So it's essentially like saying, I want to come over to your house and I'm going to, you make cans of soda and we're going to give cans of soda to your kid, but you're actually out in front of the house selling off all the soda, and your kids get a half-drunk can that somebody didn't want. By going to China and saying, oh, we're going to sell you your oil, that tells the Chinese that, one, you're looking at this world unrealistically. Trump has got in his mind, I don't know whether it's Scott Bessent, the energy, secretary, or the Hassett for the Treasury secretary, they have this myth in their head that America produces so much oil that we can flood the world with it. It's not true. We produce oil, it's being sold everywhere but in America, and we are going down. We have nothing left in the strategic reserve. When that goes to zero by 4th of July, US prices are going to spike. We also are going to start getting to what they call tank bottom, right? Where all of our reserve tanks are bunkering, the oil tankers that have fuel oil on them are going to run out, and the pipelines are going to run half empty, quarter empty, to where you got to pressurize them again, right? Oil prices are going to go, gas prices and diesel are going to go up dramatically. And where does that go? Truck drivers went from paying $700 a tank, right, to $1,800 now. Every penny of that is being raised on all of your prices. So when Trump says this to China, right, he talks to MAGA. China, he's leaning back in his chair, stroking his imaginary beard, and he's going, dude, we'll buy all of your oil because you'll just smash your own economy to make it look like you're selling us a product that you think you have a lot of, and our analysts know you don't have any of. I wouldn't be surprised China buys it. But also, another factor of this is, how does Trump keep coming off back in the United States, referring to China as the evil empire, right? Our number one adversary, technically an enemy, but he brings in every businessman in the United States to kiss their ass, to beg China to buy products, and then goes there and offers them oil that really needs to go into the American Petroleum Reserve, into the American petroleum system. We're already operating at a deficit. And, I just, all I can say, Mario, is I think he lives in an imaginary world where oil is everywhere.
Is China just saying this to give him political points so he could use those back home? But when it comes to the substance of it all, they're giving them nothing. So they gave him these statements. Oh, Iran shouldn't build a nuclear weapon. Oh, they shouldn't charge a fee at the Strait of Hormuz. Oh, we'll buy your oil. You'll make business. You'll make so much money. Iran shouldn't have, I said the nuclear weapon already. So they say all these things, but those words mean nothing unless something changes on the ground. And on the ground, we've just gotten a report from the New York Times today. I'm sure you've seen it, that China has been supplying, I think, or yesterday, China's been supplying weapons to Iran through third parties. Have you seen that report?
Yeah, I have. Hey, man, that's cash money. Not only that, they're probably paying in oil, straight, unadulterated amounts of oil, which to China is a win-win. China can put that in their strategic reserve, which China has not tapped, okay? Of all the countries that's probably best set in the world to ride this thing out, it's probably Iran, because they've got all the oil, and China, because China stopped exporting. China started limiting the use of oil. They are not allowed to export not one drop of diesel or gasoline anywhere. They have all of the urea nitrate that they need for their farms. They stopped the export of all fertilizers from China, which is filling all of the, Lowe's, Home Depot, and places, garden stores in the United States. China is prepared for China, right? And now here comes Trump to China, hat in hand, begging him for a favor. These guys are sitting back and watching us come apart, because every day that the Strait of Hormuz stays closed, Trump's fantasy that, this is really weird, Mario, I just don't get this, where he believes the Strait of Hormuz has nothing to do with the United States. Nothing. He doesn't understand the world is a swimming pool of oil, not a bunch of oil tanks, right? Which are in reserve just in your country and your country. As that pool goes lower and lower and lower and lower worldwide, you can pump all the damn oil you want. Global usage required that 20% that's missing. And Trump just said, yeah, la-di-da, everything's awesome. I got a golden statue in Mar-a-Lago. He doesn't even I don't think he even believes he's going to destroy or damage the global economy. I think he thinks that the United States is sitting pretty, and no one apparently can tell him the truth.
So, looking at the outcome of this meeting, do you think war is less or more likely? We've seen reports now that there's a security meeting in Israel, various Khan News and Channel 12 saying that Israel's preparing for war. Yeah, exactly. That's what everyone's
Friday,
asking.
Right? It's Thursday.
Exactly. It is.
It's going
it's time
into
for
the
reality.
Sabbath.
It's reality. In a statement released, so Israeli president has cancelled his trip to New York next week due to, quote, circumstances preventing the visit at this time. The IDF will enter maximum state of alert starting tomorrow when Trump leaves China. And there's Channel 12 report that they think war is imminent.
Yeah, the I game. That's what I'm going to start calling this, right? Israel, through Netanyahu, every week now as they go to the Sabbath. And I know it's good to have preparations for the Sabbath, because most Jews can't use electronic equipment. They have a protocol for that with the alerts. You have your Shabbat Goyim who will come and tell you to get into the shelters. But this is Netanyahu's game to ratchet the tension up. And you can be damn sure when Trump comes back, I don't know what he intends to tell Trump, but Trump's going to be feeling pretty good about himself. The oil markets, though, I just want to point something out. Even though it's the second day out of 3 days, Trump leaves tomorrow or tonight, whatever it is. The market is already priced in Trump's Friday afternoon bullshit that peace is breaking out. And then on Monday, his statement that war is breaking out to manipulate the market. Oil did not. Brent North Sea crude is at 104. May have gone down a bit. West Texas Intermediate still over 100. It went down by pennies, right? After Trump arrived in China and was making all these feel-good statements. I thought they probably thought it would drop to 95, 93, so him and his boys could make a boatload of money. The markets aren't playing this game anymore. They know the giant swimming pool of global oil is getting lower and lower, and that something has to break. And apparently, since China didn't volunteer to send warships or convince Iran personally to do this, I don't foresee this peace breaking out anytime soon. But I think we're going to remain in ceasefire unless Netanyahu says something, does something, or, here's the worst case scenario, Mario. The Israelis think they know where Mujtaba al-Khamenei is. And they just freaking launch 30 more ballistic missiles. United States be damned. And they blast some major building in Tehran. And let's say they kill Mujtaba al-Khamenei. I said this on our last episode. Nothing's worse than killing off old men. All right. That guy's younger than me. And I'm pretty pragmatic, right? But when you start working your way down to where your leadership's going to be in their 40s, now you're talking people that grew up with computer games and cleverness and understand the strength of Lego videos. I don't think that's going to happen. But if the only way we're going back to war is if Israel decides we're going back to war and you're coming along with us.
Well, let's look at what Saudi did. So Saudi has discussed the idea of a non-aggression pact between Middle East states and Iran as part of talks with allies on how to manage regional tensions once the US-Israeli war ends, according to diplomats. Saudi is eyeing a potential model to the 1970s Helsinki process that eased tensions in Europe during the Cold War, according to two Western diplomats, as the region anticipates a post-war Iran that is weakened, blah, blah, blah. Gulf states in particular have been concerned since the US and Israel launched the war against Iran that they would be left with a wounded, more hawkish Islamic regime on their doorstep once the conflict ends and the large American military presence in the region is scaled back, according to the Financial Times. And there's also somewhere it says that there's worries. I don't know if the Financial Times says it or some analyst says that there's worries whether the UAE will be part of it. But I'm sure they would. There's no way there'll be a region. Hold on. No, but there's also at the same time, by the way, it's in the same context. In a statement released after the BRICS summit today, I think in New Delhi, Iran's foreign minister Araghchi claimed that the UAE helped the US and Israel in Operation Fury against Iran. He said this: "In this war, the UAE stood alongside America and Israel. I said that we did not want to get into these issues for the sake of preserving unity and cohesion within BRICS. But since the Emirati representative raised this matter, we are forced to recount the facts for the international community. So, yeah.
Okay. First off, let's not pat ourselves on the back, but I believe Saudi intelligence is taking down every word we say on this program. We did we not say that that's what needs to happen? There needs to be an alliance of the Gulf states. So now what I expect to see, if Saudi Arabia has made this decision that they want something like the Helsinki Protocol, to go into effect, which is glasnost, right? Which, for those of you
Do you know much? Do you know much about the Helsinki Protocol?
Yeah, sure. Well, this was
Can you explain it briefly? Please.
Well, this was part of the thawing of relations between the former Soviet Union and the United States and the West. And what preceded that was called glasnost, right? A period of amicable thawing of relations, because it was just Soviet Union, West, atomic bombs, and war. That's all that was between those two things. And as the Soviet Union was coming apart, I think it is actually wise for Saudi Arabia to propose this, to have a non-aggression pact. Now, people don't like to use the phrase non-aggression pact because the last guy that had that was Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin. And it didn't work out very well for either part, for Poland, right? Poland was diced up between those two. So I think a better way of putting it is that they have a thawing of relations where they make it clear what we said. The Gulf states need to come together and speak as a unified body, whether they call it the GCC or, as I like to call it, right, the Arabian Islamic Treaty Organization. Make up a body, come together.
It would be funny if they use. Would be funny if they take your name and we find out in 2 days' time on the news this is the exact name they use.
Yeah, you can see them now. The Muhabarat, Ya Allah, with the right, he's writing it down. That's Malcolm. But good ideas come from many different places. But I think it's interesting that the Saudis are taking the lead. They are geographically the biggest. They are population-wise the biggest nation, 25 million people. And but what you need to see now is we need to see a world where a whirlwind of Saudi diplomats start going out to every GCC nation that, Mohammed bin Sultan brings everyone to Riyadh for the Great Riyadh Summit or the Dubai Summit, whatever you want to call it, and make a declaration that we must act as a unified alliance of Gulf states, right? The Arabian Peninsula, which, when they say that, they don't mean Iraq and they don't mean Jordan, right? They could bring in Jordan, but we'll see. But by doing this, you now create a diplomatic sphere that's bigger than the GCC, right? And more focused than the Arab League. Because, I don't know if you've been around the Arab League. I've had to watch their shenanigans for over 40 years. And it's just a good place to go have tea. It's not the greatest place to get things done. Arab League statements mean nothing.
So that's true. Yeah, that I know.
If they, and they have, it's funny. They have meetings all the time. You never hear about them, right? It's like, what? They had Arab League conference. So by creating this Arabian Islamic Treaty Organization or whatever comes out of this, they do not have to have the United States or Israel or anyone hold their hands. And it means that as a body, the Kuwaitis, Qataris, Saudi Arabians, Emiratis, maybe even the Omanis will now speak as one to Iran, separate from the United States. And if they do that, they can say that we are going to have our own alliance agreement with you, that we will help you rebuild. We will open economic ties to make your people less militant, right? And then what we expect you not to be blitzing us if Israel flies over and bombs you. And the Iranians are going to ask for a couple of things too. They're going to ask for U.S. bases to move. I keep predicting U.S. bases
Yeah,
are going to be
yeah.
moving. They're going to ask for no overflight rights for Israel. The United States, you can't stop them. They've got to resupply those Gulf states, but they're going to say no overflight rights for Israel anymore. Because, the Saudis have let them fly over, the Emiratis, the Qataris. They're just going to cut that. And then they're going to say, stay out of, stay out of the fight if the United States and Israel do anything, right? Don't be coming up and trying to, stab us in the back. Everybody wanted their licks in the last couple of hours of the war. And I
That was
remember,
wrong. That was
for
wrong.
all, right. But I mean, for all that talk about the fighters over Lavon Island, Emirati fighters, I've mentioned this before. I have seen photographs of Mirage 2000s over Isfahan and Shiraz. And
Jesus.
people were like, those aren't the French. The French aren't flying Mirage 2000s over there. Those,
It's the
and you can't
Emiratis,
tell
yeah.
a Saudi F-15 from a US F-15 unless they go down,
Are
right?
Mirages only Emirati?
Pretty much Emirati and Qatari, and it wasn't the Qataris, right?
Yeah.
So, but the point is that's the Iranians, if they want to be magnanimous about this, can say that's over and done with. We're going to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. We're all going to go get our money. But now in this new regional order, the Gulf states must become their own regional power. Their own regional power, not headed by one sheikh or one prince. They have to act as an alliance, a treaty organization. Wallah, watch. And then the Iranians can say, okay, we're going to deal with the Gulf states. We're not dealing with Israel. We're not dealing with the United States. These guys have an interest, right? There's no way that Ras Laffan can get its power plants back online, its natural gas plants, which takes 3 to 5 years until that waterway opens, right? Halas. I think that if this happens, I think it'll be a regional breakthrough because it will neutralize Iran's ability to use America and Israel as the whipping stick, the donkey beating stick for the Gulf states. And now they can they'll get the agreement with the Iranians. We'll keep buying weapons from America, China, South, wherever, but now you can't use that against us. We are about us, not about America, not about Israel.
If Trump was going to China to look for an off-ramp and they don't give it to him, isn't there also the possibility that the reports that came out of Israel from Khan News and Channel 12 that they expect an imminent strike by the US targeting Iran's energy infrastructure? Is there truth to that? Does the likelihood for that increase if Xi does not give Trump an off-ramp? Or Trump doesn't need an off-ramp from Xi?
I think she just gave him an off-ramp. She gave him the rhetoric,
political capital,
he needed. And that rhetoric is open the SOH, no nuclear weapons. Well, there's a fatwa from the Ayatollah Khomeini, right?
The no nuclear weapons
that says
silly.
no nuclear weapons. Nobody didn't say anything about we can't go right up to the edge of nuclear weapons. Iran knew what they were doing when they were selling ballistic missile components and precursors to solid fuel ballistic missiles and, tires for giant Chinese ballistic missile launchers to Iran. I mean, those tires are very expensive. You can't just get those on the open market.
They're tires for what? Which tires?
The giant ballistic missile launchers. Those, they're like 8, they've got like 16 of those massive tires on them. China sells those to them, right? They're the same ones China uses on its ballistic missile launchers. There's no giant Iranian rubber tire factory there producing 20,000, what's 8 times 20? 160,000 massive ballistic missile tires. They're coming from China. And so all of these things, China sees this box opening up, to tell you the truth, by America wiping out a lot of stuff. That's just a lot of stuff China needs to sell to Iran now. So America has technically opened up a new market or revigorated the Iranian market for China. China's going to get boatloads of oil, though, boatloads.
So you think they did give him his off ramp, but it was
I think
easy
he
as
has
that.
an off ramp,
Just
but
some
the
nice
question is,
political words, just some nice compliments for MAGA to be happy about, and that's it.
is Trump smart enough to take it? He has to craft it now. China and America are in agreement as two strategic powers. But now what has he done? China is no longer now a near peer adversary. He has validated China as equal to the United States. We saw that with the little kids holding up the flags, right? So
Yeah.
now Trump went there and he asked for this, and now not only could he not destroy Iran, now he had to ask the Chinese for help to just get him out of this jam. The only bugaboo here is Benjamin Netanyahu.
Well, there's another report came out today as well. Saudi told Trump the war in Iran should be ended and the Strait of Hormuz should be open, citing, quote, immeasurable economic losses if the situation continues. So Saudi seems to be putting up the pressure. Is this another report? I just literally copied it before we jumped on this interview. I'll read it out loud. Iran has seized the Honduras flagged vessel Hui Chuan, a Chinese operated floating armory, 38 nautical miles northeast of Fujairah, UAE, and is towing it towards Iranian territorial waters. The vessel is described as a floating armory, a weapons storage ship used by private military contractors and maritime security firms to arm commercial vessels transiting pirate-prone waters. These ships store rifles, ammunition, and defensive equipment that security teams pick up and drop off as needed. The Huchan, flying a false Honduras flag, was operated by Chinese private military contractors. It has been anchored in the Gulf of Oman for the past month, positioned to supply weapons to ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz to defend against Somali, Houthi, and Iranian threats. The timing: Iran seized this vessel during Trump's visit to Beijing, where the two leaders discussed the Strait of Hormuz crisis. Trump said she agreed that the Strait of Hormuz must remain open. What it likely means: Iran is clearing the maritime security infrastructure that enables commercial shipping to bypass its control. The Hui Chuan was arming vessels so they could transit the strait without Iranian approval. Iran just confiscated the weapons depot. Do you think? But that's if it's a Chinese-owned one, it doesn't mean it
doesn't mean
approved
it's
by the
Chinese
CCP.
government.
Exactly,
it's not
exactly.
Chinese government. It's a private contract ship. Way back in the oldie days of the 2015s, I was a private security contractor and a private intelligence contractor in Iraq, Libya, and a whole bunch of other places. And when Yemen broke out with the trouble with first the Somali pirates, the biggest problem that we had with the a new version of PMC, not private military contractors, was private maritime contractors wanted to go and were being asked to put armed tactical security teams on these vessels in order to fight off the Somali pirates. And a lot of these ships had small arms, like just rifles, but you had to upgrade to PKM machine guns, 50 calibers in some realms like that. So the private maritime company industry was born, where you would like pick up a ship and a small lighter that would take you up near Socotra Island off of Yemen, and you would meet the ship that you were on, and you would bring the rifles there. But because of international law, two things had to happen. One, you could not be on a ship without being an able-bodied seaman and a licensed merchantman, right? So all of these companies had to suddenly, everybody had to become an able-bodied seaman so that they could legally be on that ship. The other problem was you could not leave international waters with weapons. Right? You go inside the 12 nautical mile zone of Somaliland or whatever, they can seize your weapons. The Coast Guard can board you, take all of your weapons. So the solution, which, I can't remember the first time I heard about this. Might have been 2015, 2016. The solution was to have an at-sea armory.
That's crazy.
No, it's not crazy. It's just that the ship never pulls into dock. Right? And the weapons stay out there. And what you do is this is not crazy. This is the way it is. I believe Control Risk might have been one of the first companies to do this. Control Risk and what do you call it? Not Garda, but one of the big companies, was doing this originally. And then the brilliant idea with this mainly all manifested from the Somali pirates, right? And in fact, they couldn't do this with the Houthis because you had to get off the ship before you passed the Bab el-Mandab, because you're within two countries' maritime waters, Yemen's and Somalia's. And then when you leave, you got the Saudis and the Egyptians, right? And then the Houthis could attack your ship. So this worked great off of Somalia. You might see some videos, guys up there in small boats coming alongside, guys taking out their M4s and AK-47s and lighting up the Somali pirates. But this ship was an arsenal ship. Or actually, the best way to describe it is not an arsenal ship. It was a floating at-sea weapons locker. And then what they do is, on contract, big companies will come alongside, right? A small lighter will come alongside. They will draw the weapons and ammunition that has been contracted and delivered to them for that operation. They'll board 6 or 8 guys will board the merchantman. The merchantman will drive all the way down to Somalia, wherever. And then those guys will get off the ship onto another small contract ship outside of 12 nautical miles. Ship will go in, offload its cargo. Ship will come back, pick up the armed PMCs, and they'll go back and do this little round robin of these things. Lots of ships are armed out there now, loads of them.
So that would be private, or that would not be the CCP. That would be some private contractor.
It's private contractor. But I find it fascinating that the IRGC is like, hey man, that ship that's sitting like 50 miles northeast of Fujairah, actually it's off Khor Fakkan. I saw where the UK MTO said that they seized it. Let's just go grab it. It's chock full of guns. All right? And what we're going to do is we're going to say, this is a pirate vessel. First off, when that ship gets into port, they're going to steal every damn weapon that's in there. They're just going to take all the weapons. They now belong to the IRGC.
But what do you make of the timing of it on the meeting between Trump and Xi out of all days? There must be something there.
I'm not sure whether that was a signal to anybody, as opposed to, hey, we can nab that boat there right now, because most of the PMCs that are on these vessels are like Brits, Australians, Americans, some Filipinos and Indians, and Kenyans, right? They bring a lot of these guys out with them too. The point is now there is no one, all right, that is going to be out there protecting anybody from the Somali pirates or the Yemeni pirates, who will say, oh, now we can go through the Bab el-Mandab island, waterway, and start snagging ships off Socotra Island. I mean, it's a brilliant move if you think about it, because the first people the IRGC called were the Houthis. It's like, hey, all those ships not armed anymore. We got their guns. You want some?
It's crazy.
It's a crazy story.
It's crazy industry as well. So as a final question, do you come out, oh, it is, whoever came up with the idea, I want to meet that entrepreneur. They're like, you know what we should do? We should have a floating coffers of weapons, and then we should have them at the borders of countries. As soon as you come out of the 12 nautical miles, you arm up, and then before you arrive to the port you're going to, you give it up on the other lockers we have there. It's like we have created an easy pass. You scan your card, you get your weapons.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm dead certain that it was one of the major companies. Group 4 Securitas or Control Risk came up with this idea.
Final question. After this meeting and what we know so far, you came out more or less optimistic? I've kind of asked it already, but not as directly.
Neutral. Principally because like I said, nothing changed. The only wild card here is I'm constantly keeping my eye on Israel now. Netanyahu could restart this war and force us into this through some crazy scenarios. And
I'll have sorry, Malcolm. Sorry, Trump just posted before we go off. When President Xi very elegantly referred to the U.S. as perhaps being a declining nation, he was referring to the tremendous damage we suffered during the 4 years of sleepy Joe Biden and the Biden administration. And on that score, he was 100% correct. Our country suffered immeasurably with open borders, high taxes, transgender for everybody, men and women's sports, DEI, horrible trade deals, rampant crime, and so much more. President Xi was not referring to the incredible rise that the US has displayed to the world during the 16 spectacular months of the Trump administration. I'm not making this up, which includes all-time high stock markets and 401ks, military victory and thriving relationship with Venezuela, the military decimation of Iran, brackets to be continued, strongest military on earth by far, economic powerhouse again, with a record $18 trillion being invested in the United States by others, best US job market in history with more people working in the US, blah, blah, DEI. In fact, President Xi congratulated me In fact, President Xi congratulated me on so many tremendous successes in such a short period of time. 2 years ago, we were, in fact, a nation in decline. On that, I fully agree with President Xi. But now the US is the hottest nation anywhere in the world, and hopefully our relationship with China will be stronger and better than ever before. Imagine President Xi reading this.
Yeah, but you can almost see them sitting there drinking Japanese whiskey and smoking cigars, rolling on the floor, laughing. I mean,
what do you make of it to be continued? Just nothing.
Well, that's just his.
He's been doing that the whole time.
His bluster. The person who's going to take this out of his hand lives in Tel Aviv. But she just has to be thinking, good God, this guy's old and demented. The hottest economy in the world at that time was Joe Biden's economy. This is meth is a hell of a drug. That's what the Chinese must be thinking. The Americans live in an alternate reality where up is down, black is white, a collapsing economy is just the greatest thing that's ever happened to America. And you know what they're saying to each other? Keep it up. China is eating our economic lunch right now. We're taxing American citizens to no end. I just got this from FedEx. The tariffs have been lifted, but they still want me to pay $114 for a shipment that came from Finland. They're going to get their money back, but the money I have to pay for a package is never going to be returned to me. Yeah. So that's what Donald Trump has done. He has taxed the American public into a corner, and he's a billionaire. Billionaires never pay for nothing. Always make the poor do it. And the Chinese are just laughing into their teacups at this point. America's run by, a bunch of deluded crazies. And that's fine, because if they want to sell us oil and starve their own population and go to $8 to $10 gallon of gasoline, fine by China, right? He loves it. I'm sure the Chinese are having a grand old time tonight.
Malcolm, thank you so much for coming on again, man. I appreciate it as always.
You're welcome, man. Take care.
See you, man. All right, guys. That's one of your favorite guests explaining in pretty articulate terms his thoughts on this meeting between Trump and Xi. And I really have no opinion on it. I really can't make, from these statements you see by presidents after a meeting like this, a lot of it is just for show. And it's impossible to know what decisions are being made behind the scenes. That post by Trump is just bizarre. But it is what it is. Anyway, I have no idea if that increases or reduces the likelihood of a war. I'll see you guys in 5 minutes. Larry Johnson, our final guest for the day. And that'll be it for today. Thanks, guys.